Afternoon, everybody. A little bit of an unscheduled thing here. I just want to share a couple things real quick. Uh, Record buying. I'm going to give you a few tips. Uh, just share a few things. I have a few people who will message me their fails, epic, and successes. There's certainly a mixed bag out there when you buy, especially online, which with today's current climate is how most people are shopping. Always cross-reference when you buy eBay, Discogs, and Amazon. Amazon has the least vinyl of the three, and I find one in 3 or 4 titles I'm looking for is actually on Amazon on vinyl. And navigating Amazon's site for vinyl is the toughest of the three by far. But usually you can find it once you kind of figure out how to find the vinyl titles. They're in there. Amazon is very difficult to navigate. It's difficult to get a hold of the seller. The photos are never of the item itself. Always just a generic picture of that item someone posted at one point. On Amazon, it's best to actually reach out and ask the seller some questions if you got them. It's a much less predictable bag, I find, on Amazon. I've gotten some great deals, but Amazon also will have some of their bots artificially set prices. And so sometimes the pricing is just ridiculous on Amazon and is laughable. eBay tends to be where your most high ticket items are. The real collectible pieces that are in good condition. It's also the place where you can probably get the best deal. The best deal is to usually find stuff that's at auction. And I'm going to give you guys some hints here. That's might end up biting me in the ass someday, but I'm hoping here that most of the items I'm looking for, most people aren't looking for that stuff. Most people are looking for more titles that I've already got. So I'm going to share a few things here. First and foremost, when you look at a seller on eBay, always look at how many followers that seller has. It'll tell you two things. Number one, it will tell you how experienced and reputable the seller is, which is important and good. But it'll also tell you how many people are being notified about auctions and new sales. And so you take some of the big ones like Caroline Soul and what's the other one? Funk and Soul something. Those two sellers have thousands of followers, and they get great records. They grade them very correctly. But because 4,000 emails went out for this sale, you're competing against a lot of people. And myself included, I've overpaid for stuff at auction, getting kind of caught up in the moment. And sometimes you think, well, I'm already buying other things, I might as well include one other thing, the shipping will be next to nothing. But sometimes you'll get done, pay $36 for something, then you'll look on eBay or Discogs and there's a copy there for $6 plus $4 shipping, so you still didn't come out ahead. And so generally when I go through an auction, I'll highlight the stuff I'm interested in well in advance. And then I'll do some background checking. I'm like, where else is this available? And if I can go on Discogs and find 5 copies, I generally won't pursue it at auction unless it's a seller with very few followers. And now that's a double-edged sword, because a seller that has very few followers, very few people got notified about said auction, which, unless it's John Coltrane Blue Train, which people are going to be searching that specific title all the time. You know, there's just specific titles that are very ubiquitous that people will look for that specific title. But if you're looking for something kind of random and obscure, or even middle of the pack, if it's listed by a seller with under 100 followers, very few people got notified about that item. And how many people can there be in a given week searching for Sonny Clark Leapin' and Lopin'? That's Blue Notes. There's probably going to be more people looking for that actually. But there's plenty of great titles I've found on eBay from sellers with very few followers that I got for next to nothing. I got a Clark Terry Riverside original pressing, beautiful record. The guy had 8 followers. I think I paid $6 for it. It's probably a $100 record easily. It's in beautiful condition, but the guy didn't have any followers. No one knew it was there. Nobody else happened to be looking for old Clark Terry Riversides that particular week. So you can get a real steal. The catch is, when a seller doesn't have a lot of followers, they're not necessarily reputable. And you can't look at their history and their reviews. And a guy that's got 4,000 followers has a lot of happy customers. A guy with 14 followers is new to this, and you could be taking a gamble. And that's the risk-reward ratio you got to factor in for yourself. For myself, if it's got the original cover and it's original vinyl, original pressing, I will lower my expectations, even if it's a seller I don't know, and take a chance if the price is right. And that's something you got to kind of govern for yourself. But that's a real good way to find something on eBay at a good price, is if you find someone who's got, if you find 3 copies of something and one of them is by a seller who's auctioning it off with very few followers, chances are, unless it's a really well sought after title, that won't have a lot of bids on it. And that's what you're looking for if you want bargains. Of course, if you're just looking for the best pressing, most expensive pressing, those will usually be buy it nows, not auctions. Not always, but buy it nows almost always on eBay and Discogs. Some sellers might be annoyed with me for saying this. You should always send an offer. Even if it doesn't offer you the make an offer option, especially if the record's over 60, 80, 100, 200 bucks, when it starts getting up there, the seller knows what he's got into it. The seller knows how long he's had it. The seller knows how much interest there's been in it. And if it's a record he just listed and he put 80 bucks into it, no, he's not going to mark it down to 200. If it's something that he's had listed for 5 years and you're the first person who's nibbled, and you ask, the guy's asking 160, and you say, you know, I'm interested in it, but I'm at 80. I'm at 80 for this. That's the best I'll give you for that. Even if it's a rare title, if the guy's had no one else nibble on it, he will be interested, and if nothing else, will usually make you a counter offer. Again, I'm giving away some of my trade secrets. I'm sure some of you guys do this stuff anyway, but Discogs as well. There's some tricks there. Whenever I'm looking for a specific title, I'll go to Discogs first always. I'll usually check eBay before I buy anything, but I'll usually go to Discogs first always. And it'll give me a pretty good instant validation of how rare an item is. It very clearly illustrates for you which edition of a pressing you're bidding on. And if you want to go to the item's history description, you can actually see a listing of every edition that the album received, both in Europe, Japan, and America. And you can actually select the version you're looking for, or you can select all variations. You can choose between CD and vinyl, of course. You can set a lot of different variations in your settings to determine what you're looking for. But Discogs will usually have a very good indicator of how common or how difficult a record is to find. They'll also tell you how often it's been sold, how many people are looking for it right now on Discogs. It'll give you a lot of information, and it'll help you make a fair assessment. I find eBay prices to be usually on par with Discogs. Amazon's are completely out of whack. Not to say there's not some good deals on Amazon. You can find them, but like I said, a lot of times the stuff's set by bots. It feels like a lot of the sellers are kind of used bookstores, not necessarily just record guys like you get on eBay and on Discogs, where vinyl's what we do, you know, so we're knowledgeable about what we're selling. On Amazon, you have a lot more variance, it feels like, of who the sellers are. Another great trick is you don't want to take advantage of people. But you can oftentimes, when you look at an auction, you'll get a pretty good idea via the description. Sometimes even the seller will put a note in there telling you the situation that's they're a part of. I'm a longtime seller. I've owned record stores. I've been collecting vinyl for decades. That's going to give you some reputation and some security that they're going to sell you an accurate product. Other sellers might be like, my husband passed, I've just been putting this stuff on here trying to get rid of it, and that's going to mean there's a lot of unknown with some of the pressings and some of the condition issues, but there's also the opportunity to really make a great score. And sometimes the widow, sometimes the sister-in-law, the daughter-in-law is listening to stuff and it's just a nuisance to them, and they'll often be more than willing to take offers. And one of the most effective things to do is to bundle. And one of my tricks is always, I'm usually looking for one title specifically today. I'm trying to find this Savoy or this Argo, and I'm looking for it, I'm searching for it, okay, I can't find it. And you can't even on Discogs set setting that'll let you be notified if the pressing you're looking for shows up, which is nice. But if you find a title you're looking for on Discogs, and sometimes you'll even find 3, 4, 7, 8, 10 copies of what you're looking for on Discogs, don't just buy the copy you're looking for necessarily. You usually want to search those sellers' stores and do a few. I would always recommend doing a jazz search if you're looking for jazz. Let's go to the jazz heading, see how many jazz records they got. Most sellers will have between 50 jazz titles and a couple thousand jazz titles. And you can scroll through 2,000 jazz titles in about 10 minutes. 50 titles a page. You can go through that pretty quick. But then you can go to the search bar within the store and even narrow down the searches even more. I'll sometimes limit it to a certain era, nothing after 65, 70. And I've done a lot of stuff where I've searched by label. And I found a record I'm looking for here on Emercy. This is what I want. Let's see what else they got by Emercy. Oh, there's a couple cool ones I've never seen that before. So I'll start building a cart. And then I'll see if they have any old Argo titles. There's a couple Prestige I've been looking for, that new jazz. And next thing you know, you put a cart together of 8, 10 items. And almost all sellers, not all, but almost all sellers will jump at a chance to move a bulk amount of inventory. It's less shipping and hassle for them to put 8 things into one box or 2 boxes than to ship 8 separate things out. And so generally they'll be willing to negotiate with you. Some sellers will ship for free if you buy enough things. But again, I don't want to give away all my trade secrets, but generally I'll go into anything I buy, especially if it's a bigger ticket item. If there's a record I want for over $50 from someone, $100, 80, and I really don't go over 100 hardly ever. And if it's listed at over 100, I won't pay that. I'll pay less than 100, make an offer, but I don't think I've ever paid more than $100 for a record ever. But if you have a record that they want $80 for it, I'll go into their store and find 4, 5, 6 other things that are usually in the $10 to $20 range, maybe $25, maybe just a wide spectrum of stuff. And then I'll look at those items and I'll round them all down to the nearest 5. 17, let's make it 15. 19, let's make that 15. 22, let's make that 20. And the one I wanted for 85, let's make that 65. And so suddenly he's taking a little bit of a dent on that one, but he's also selling some other titles that he's probably sat on for a while, and they might be kind of infill, but they might also be interesting titles that you don't know nothing about, you're learning. And so you can grab some cool old Argos, Emercies, Riversides, old Blue Notes you don't know. There's a lot of cool stuff out there that sits there that's less popular than what the collectors today talk about. And as I've said before, anything that got put on a jazz label in the 50s and into the early 60s, they all can play. Nobody was getting quarter 8-inch tape wasted on them that couldn't play. You could play. And so you'll always find some interesting stuff made by great players. So try to bundle stuff together, try to get a little package going. And then, again, expectations. If you're buying from a reputable seller, it's okay to be disappointed when it doesn't match what you expected from the description. But if you're buying from a seller with very little reputation, very little feedback, A, you should never pay top dollar there. B, you gotta know there's some risk there when you start buying from those sellers. And C, hopefully you knew going in that I'm buying an old pressing of a prestige record. And what's very good plus for an original pressing, to me, has a little bit more leeway than what's very good plus of an 80s or 90s reissue. You know, I think there's a little bit more room to be forgiving with an old 50s or 60s copy of something that a seller might have overgraded a little bit, but it's the original thing. And the cool thing about a lot of those original pressings is they're thicker vinyl, they're deeper grooves, and a lot of that surface scuffing and scratching won't even be picked up in the sound at all. You know, if you can't feel a scratch, you won't hear it, generally speaking, on an old record. And of course online you don't have that option, but when you get it and it looks like if you can't feel that stuff, it's gonna be maybe some static, but it should be pretty minimal. So those are just some jazz buying tips I want to share with people. There's so much risk nowadays. The prices are going up so extreme. Be careful, be smart, and know what you're buying so your expectations are set accordingly. If you buy from a reputable seller, you'll probably get what they described. And I'm almost guaranteeing you that if you buy from a reputable seller and you're disappointed with what the description was, it's your misunderstanding of the description and not the seller's misrepresentation. That's on you. You didn't get it. You don't know what a very good plus looks like. And conversely, if it's a seller with very little history, very little feedback, it's on you to recognize that they don't maybe necessarily know. And that can work in your favor. They can see some paper scuffs and surface scuffs and think a record scratched as shit, and it's actually very good plus and fine and will play great. And they marked it down considerably. Another rule of thumb I want to share: never pass up a nicely graded record because the jacket's split or beat up. Never. You can get a $200 record for $70, $80 because the jacket's got some splits in it. That's a gift. You should thank the person who split those seams, because you're not going to get the record for a better price than that. And the fact that there's drawing on the cover, or someone signed the back, or there's marker or whatever, that's actually giving you a license to say to the seller, hey, I'm interested in this record. I see that there's a lot of damage to the cover, some water issues. Would you take $50 for that $70 record? The worst I can say is no. And in this economic climate, most sellers are going to be willing to move stuff along. Again, depending on how demanded that product is. If it's a Mingus or a Miles, he's probably not going to take any offer. There's enough people looking for that stuff. But there's plenty of rare items that a year might go between someone searching for it, 6 months. And he also knows, the seller, generally speaking, how many copies are out there. So if you're asking him to give you a deal on a record where there's 30 other pressings on Discogs, he's probably going to be a little bit more willing to be like, yeah, I'll take $5 off that. But if it's a record that there's no other copies out there, that right there in and of itself can make them double what they asked for it. And again, they know what they put into it. They know what they're willing to take. They know how long they've had it. So some guys are willing just to hold on to something. There's this guy, Stuart Colt, who's got some old Savoys I've wanted to buy from him for a long time. And I've made several reach outs and attempts to buy stuff from him on Discogs. He won't budge. He'd rather sit in that product for 3 years, 5 years, whatever, and not sell it and then discount it to somebody. And he's not budged anytime I've ever asked him to. And that's his prerogative. I don't resent him for it. I'm going to try here and there to get what I can. I work on a tight budget. I can't afford to pay $200 for a record. I'm just not going to do it. And I'll eventually wait for a Japanese copy to come into my lap. That's one last thing I want to share is the Japanese issues are always great. They sound great. They usually are true to the label and the artwork. They do a great job with all of that aspect. the most important thing with buying from Japan is don't ever buy one record. Again, it's not something you can do. You buy one record for $40, the shipping is going to cost you $35, which means you spend $75 for that one record. Now, if you can buy 4 records for $100, $120 from Japan, from the same seller, and then he ships them together, he's only going to add $5 or $4 an LP to the shipping cost for each additional record. So suddenly that $40 record with $35 shipping, $75 for one record, suddenly you got $140 for 4 records and $40 shipping. So your shipping actually per record gets distributed, whereas all of a sudden now instead of being $30 to ship one, it's $10 per record. So you have that $10 shipping to each record, and that's suddenly a much better deal. You're paying 30 plus 10 is 40 for that, 35 plus 10 is 45 for that. So you don't feel so bad about paying $75 for a $40 record. So the more you can buy from Japan, the more your shipping will flatten out the cost of each record and make the shipping seem less of a painstaking experience. Shipping one record from Japan is expensive and ugly and makes you pay way too much for an album. But if you buy 4 is the number. Because I think most of the sellers, once you get past 4, will split them into 2 different packages. So then your shipping's going to be, again, that big first hit for that package. But if you buy 4, they usually will put that in one box. And that'll bring your shipping down to about $8-10 per LP, which isn't so bad. Especially if they're 4 titles that you've been looking for. And say they're $40 a title, plus $8 shipping, $48. So you're paying about $200 for these 4 titles. That one record as an original pressing here in America is probably $200 itself. So if you can buy 4 records out for $200 that are all really hard to find here, and they're going to be well priced, well produced, well packaged Japanese pressings that sound good, that's not a bad exchange. But that's the only way you should buy from Japan, is if you buy multiple things, so you can adjust the shipping ratios. Europe is more of a hodgepodge. You don't really know. It's tough. Things will almost always eventually show up, but I've heard some nightmares of stuff being lost in the mail for a long time, depending on where it's coming from. And shipping costs between England and America, Switzerland, France, Denmark, it's not cheap. It shouldn't be as expensive as it is. It doesn't seem, but nevertheless it is. It's really expensive. So again, record store shopping is a delight, and there's few things more enjoyable in this world than making a great find in the wild. And finding something in a record store that you've been looking for a long time is a gleeful moment. Only surpassed by being in a thrift store or some kind of pawn shop, swap meet, some kind of place that's not even really a record store. It's comic books, it's books, it's whatever. You know, memorabilia, trading cards, and you find a record you're looking for in there. A garage sale, those really off the beaten path finds where you find something you've really wanted for a long time in a place where it shouldn't be. Those are moments you'll never forget. You'll always remember where you found that record, and do not make the mistake of not buying a record you've been looking for when you find it in a weird place. Because it'll be a day you celebrate the rest of your life, or it'll be a moment you rue for the rest of your life. Why didn't I grab that? And another general rule of thumb is if you're buying something in a thrift store, a pawn shop, kind of some other place that's not really a record specialized store, almost always they're either going to be not knowledgeable or they're going to be selling them as consignment for somebody else, and they'll have already been given permission and work to negotiate some. And again, if it's a $70 record and the guy's like, it's not mine, it's so-and-so's, say, please call the guy. Will you please call him and say, I'll offer him $45, plus I'll buy these 2 other records here for 10 and 10. Will you make that offer to him? And they'll be almost always be willing to call the guy. And usually the guy's gonna be on the phone like, oh, that's $100, I could use that. Yeah, tell him I'll take that. So again, when you're buying used records, it's used. There's room to negotiate almost always. New product that doesn't exist the same way. That's just a different story. And I buy very little new. I try not to. Some stuff you just, you have to, but I try to buy stuff as used and as vintage as possible. I love the smell of an old record. I'll even buy, if I have a reissue of something, OJC or something, and then I find an old copy of it, even if the record's kind of beat up or even the jacket's beat up, I'll often make an offer on it if it's something that's affordable enough and cool enough. Oh, that's a really great record. I love it. Maybe if I can get that for $15, that'd be worth it for me to have just the original, just to smell it, feel it, look at it. And with that type of deal, sometimes you'll even get the miracle where you get it and it plays great. You clean it, you put it on the turntable, and it sounds like, wow, this doesn't even sound at all like it looks. It's a crapshoot. So there's a lot of it's on you to be responsible as a consumer and to know what you're looking for, to know how to negotiate and navigate these sites, to understand who the sellers are and how much you can count on trusting what they're saying. I'll tell you this, very few reputable sellers are out there bullshitting consumers. It's too risky, it's too much, there's too much product returned, too much of a waste of their time. Most reputable sellers online are going to be over descriptive and overshare any minute flaw to eradicate the chance of them taking the time to ship you a record. And you saying there's a speck of paint on the back cover I didn't know about, I want my money back. It's like, the seller doesn't have time for that. So they're going to list every little thing on there. And those guys are pretty much honest till the day is long because they don't want to waste their time. And I've met a number of record store guys who stopped selling online because it was just too much of a hassle. Selling to people in the store can be a hassle. They're looking at it and they're, doing all the things they do, selling online is a real pain in the ass for a lot of people. And there's people who make a living at it, and those people are good at what they do, and they're going to be very reputable. And the other ones, you're going to take a chance, but the chance also equals to the fact you can probably get it for a good price, and that's the trade-off. So that's just some record tips from the Jazz Shepherd. Record shopping is a fun thing to do. There's little that matches the euphoria of finding that piece you've been looking for the longest time. It is quite a thrill. That Pinky Winters I got recently, for me, that was the moment that was one of my holy grails. I was just thrilled to finally, and I shared that story in one of my episodes, a record I've been looking for forever. And the seller had it listed as unplayable almost, and it's near pristine. I don't know how the record cosmic gods shone some love on the Shepherd that day. I'll tell you what, I got it with great apprehension. Going, I either paid $70 for an unplayable coffee cup holder, or I hope it's at least playable with some skips and hums, and it's actually silent. It plays like a ghost. It's wonderful. So there's a lot of joy in this collecting thing. That's part of the joy, is finding the stuff. The internet's made it easier, but it's also taken some of the joy out of it. But something that's super rare, having access to the whole world via the internet, is a great thing. I don't think I could have built my collection the old-fashioned way, just buying things in stores. In the early thousands, late 90s, I was traveling the country looking for records. Going to New York and Boston and Philly and Detroit and Chicago, just scouring, looking for old soul records, old jazz records. This is before the thing really took off. And I've seen a lot of those records triple, quadruple in price in the last 10 years. It's pretty nuts. Anyway, y'all be safe. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.